All right, welcome to this portion of the presentation. I'm Cole. The article that we covered was called Impact of Language Dominance on Phonetic Transfer in Cantonese English Bilingual Switching or Language Switching. I will be covering the methods and goals portions of the experiment, and Luke will be talking about the results. So first off, the goals or goal of the research project was to determine how several different groups of English Cantonese bilinguals responded to language switching and how the language switching promoted interference between their two languages, particularly in relation to voice onset time. And they wanted to see how the different dominance levels affected the interference. So what they did was they gathered 60 Cantonese English bilinguals, all college students living in Hong Kong. Like it says here, no visual, speech, or language or hearing impairments in any of the participants. And they were all native speakers of Cantonese. In fact, they originally had 5 more participants in the study, but they weren't native speakers, and so they were eliminated from participation. And then in order to control for length or time of exposure to English, they made sure that all the participants had been exposed to English by age 6. So whether that be attending international schools in English or what have you. And then once they had gathered their participants, they gave each of them this self-examination questionnaire called the LEAP-Q, or Language Experience and Proficiency Questionnaire. And this questionnaire was divided into 4 sections covering 4 different topics, essentially spoken proficiency, listening comprehension, daily exposure, and self-perceived accent. And all the participants were asked to rank themselves or give themselves a score between 1 and 9, 1 being barely speak or understand, and 9 being native speaker level on each of those sections. And then to be classified as a bilingual, no scores lower than 2 were allowed. So no individual could give themselves a score of 1, or they would be considered monolingual and then eliminated from the study. But none of the participants scored lower than 2 on any of their questions, so they were able to divide the college students into 3 groups: English dominant, or Cantonese dominant, and balanced bilingual, with 20 students each. And then what they did for the test was, in order to elicit the language switching from the 3 groups, they had 24 pictures, like it says, colored, unambiguous pictures. And half of the pictures were used to elicit English and half to elicit Cantonese. And they made sure that all the words were non-cognate, meaning that the words weren't similar in the 2 languages. They were all monosyllabic with voiceless and unaspirated initial stops with 3 different places of articulation: bilabial, alveolar, and velar. And then all the Cantonese words were the same tone, tone 1, so that they could eliminate any effect that the various tones would have on voice onset time. And then what each participant was asked to do, first they were allowed a chance to kind of get familiar with the test. They were exposed to each of the 24 pictures for 4,000 milliseconds. And then they did 3 practice runs through the test just to become familiar with what they're supposed to do. And they were asked to go through a sequence of images and name each image as quickly and accurately as possible. So the image would appear on a screen. Depending on what language it was supposed to elicit, the border would be a different color, red for Cantonese and blue for English. And the student was supposed to respond and then press enter on the keyboard to go to the next image, and so on and so forth. And the images would either rotate between Cantonese and English, or they would remain the same. So English, English, Cantonese, Cantonese, in order to just elicit various different responses. And that is it for the methods. Luke will be talking about the results.